myself to this stream, huh? Ooh, it's early, y'all. I'm a few minutes early, and y'all already know my internet situation, so we're gonna do the best we can. It's early, y'all. I'm a few minutes early, and y'all already know my internet situation, so okay, I gotta figure out where that echo is coming from. Y'all, I'm a few minutes early, and y'all already know my internet situation, so okay, I gotta figure out where that echo. I think I got it. Nailed it. All right. I think we're here. Hey, everybody. Let me go ahead and get the housekeeping out of the way. First of all, it's 12 o'clock noon where most of you all are. It is midnight for me. Pray for me. But let me clean the house and do everything I got to do. Good morning or good evening or whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world. My name is Sandra, and welcome to my channel, From Lack to Legacy. On this channel, we're all things money, investing, and mindset, particularly how to go from a scarcity mindset to a mindset of abundance. Hey, Shauna, I got it right this time. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, please stay. Welcome, 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 everybody. Hey, Shauna, I got it right finally. This time thing, y'all, has me in a chokehold. I'm just not good with it. That whole something gets lost in translation. So, for those of you that don't know, I am not in the States, I'm in Bali. And I am 12 hours, 13 hours, 14 hours ahead of y'all. Because for most of y'all, it is Saturday. And for me, I'm going into Sunday. So, in like 30 seconds, it's going to be Sunday, 12:01 a.m. So, I've already had my Saturday while y'all are still enjoying Saturday, I hope. But welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're new here, don't forget, please like, subscribe, and share the channel. Good news, y'all. We are like 15, somewhere 15 or 16 subscribers away from 1,000 subscribers. So I'm going to be celebrating that. And if you all could give me some feedback about whether or not you can see and hear, if the picture is clear, that would be helpful too. I'm happy to be doing this one. This is a little different from what I normally do. I see we have 6 people in the that are watching. So please make sure, and I'll check over here with because I've got my YouTube up on my phone where I can watch too, and participate in the chat with y'all. So please don't forget, hit the like button, subscribe, share the channel, y'all. Get me over to 16. It's clear. Yay, Shauna. Okay, as long as it's clear, we in good shape. If you can't catch the live, then be sure to catch this in the replay. Be sure to share it with somebody. Hey, Brenda. Hey, Hank. You know I'm telling the whole story. I'm telling everybody and everything. But hopefully you two can kind of chime in on the chat, because Hank Henry McMorris is a teacher that I taught with for many years, and so he understands the game too. So today I'm giving the game away. I'm giving it all away for free, but in an effort to help teachers particularly, and even if you aren't in the profession exactly, but you've ever worked in the corporate world, or you worked in corporate America, um, or been employed by anybody in any way, some of this stuff will apply to you, because a toxic work environment is a toxic work environment, period. It doesn't matter if it's a school or if it's corporate America, or if it's a small company, a private employer. You'll know if you're in a toxic work environment. And so tonight, there are 5 things that I want to go over. And particularly, I'm talking to teachers, but if it applies to you, baby, pick it up and use it. But there are 5 things that I want to go over, that if you think you're in a toxic work environment, here's some things that I learned through my experience of being in a toxic work environment that might help you. And so I'll go over those 5 things, and y'all forgive me, because the teacher in me is never going to die. I have notes. I got a notepad and pencil. So I would suggest too that if you're so inclined, get a pencil and some paper out. Hey, Nirel, happy Saturday. Get some pencil, get some paper, because it might help you just to organize these things. I'm going to try to run through it. Nirel, I tried to do the premiere. It didn't work, girl. The internet is too sketchy. It took hours to upload that video. I said, forget it. I might as well take a nap and do my best and be ready for midnight. So y'all, yeah, if y'all pray for me, I'm telling you, send good vibes and all that stuff because it is midnight and I'm hoping that we can do this in under an hour and I can be in bed by 1 o'clock in the morning because tomorrow I'm going to the elephant sanctuary. Hey, Kathy, thank you for joining us. Tomorrow I'm going to see an elephant sanctuary in a town called Taro, which is, I think, a little north of Ubud. So that's what I'm doing. So let's get to it, you all. Tonight, as the title says, there are 5 things that stressed teachers, or really anybody that's in a stressful or toxic work environment, that you can do. There are 5 things that I want to talk about tonight that might help you. And one of those things, I'll just read them to you. Hi, greetings. Hello, hello. Everybody, come on in. The first thing I want to help you do is identify, first of all, if in fact you are in a toxic work environment. Because if you're like me, I was in it and didn't even know. I thought it was all me. I thought it was stuff that was going on with my body. Hey, Steph, I thought it was me. I don't want that to be you. I mean, it could be, you could be mistaking this for it's just you're having a bad day and you just have a string of bad days. But there are some certain things that you can look out to help you identify if you're in a toxic work environment. That's number one. Number two, if in fact that is what's happening, self-care and stress management, you're going to need that. And so I want to outline some things that I was able to do to help me navigate that situation. And I have some resources that might be helpful for you. The third thing that we're going to talk about in navigating a stressful or toxic work environment is that you're going to have to build a support system for yourself. Nobody is coming to save you. Nobody threw me a lifeline. I had to be my own best advocate, and I want to give you some helpful things that may help you advocate for yourself and certainly take care of yourself. Fourthly, we are going to talk about maybe it's time to explore a different career path. It's okay. We are not trees. We can move. But I understand being a teacher that your loyalty lies with the children and the families and the relationships that you've built. And sometimes we buy into this false narrative that there isn't anything else that we can do as teachers. Especially if you've done it for a long time. Like I found myself 20 years into my career, 25 years into my career before, things got a little sticky. I bought into that narrative that this is all I can do. All I can do is be a teacher. That's not true. Teachers have transferable skills. There are employers out there that are looking for the skills that you have. So we'll talk about that too. And finally, if it's your day and you have figured it out that this is no longer sustainable for me and that you need to exit this environment, we're going to talk about some steps that you might need to take to create an exit plan, because you don't want to just be in your feelings and say, okay, I've identified it's a toxic work environment, I'm out of here. Everybody doesn't have the luxury of doing that. And planning is going to be your best friend. So those are the 5 things that I hope to cover with you tonight. And I'm going to try to do it in record time. I'm watching the chat here. So Marilyn, who is usually our moderator for the night, Marilyn is taking some time for herself. And I applaud this behavior. Please go out, have a great time. So the first thing we're going to do is identify the signs that you might be in a toxic work environment. And y'all forgive me because I say the teacher in me is never going to die. I got notes. So here are 10 things. I'll run through them really quickly, and then we can kind of go back over and talk about what those things look like. So if you've got some pencil and paper, class is about to start. 10 things that might suggest that you are in a toxic work environment. 1 is poor communication. We'll go back to it. 2, do you think it's a high level of stress? It's continued, it is persistent, it's prolonged stress, and there isn't a teacher in the world that can't identify with that. Number 3, is your environment structured so that it feels like there's a lack of trust and a lack of respect, whether that's between colleagues or from your admins or your boss downward. If there's a lack of respect and trust, you might be in a toxic work environment. Is there bullying or harassment that you can identify, whether it's directed at you or someone else? That might signify that you're in a toxic work environment. Nobody should be bullied at work. Nobody should be harassed at their job. Micromanagement. This is the one that bothered me the most. Oh my goodness. If you have someone who's micromanaging you, that right there shows a lack of trust. It is, we'll get into all of them. Is there for you, the worker, a lack of work-life balance? Do you find that the job is so demanding, their deadlines, unmanageable workload that you're working all around the clock? Even when you're off the clock, you're still on the clock. If there's no work-life balance there in combination with some of these other things, I'm telling you, it's probably a toxic work environment. Is the workplace riddled with constant negativity? Just everywhere you go, it's a negative, people say negative things about it. Nobody wants to be there. Every time you walk into the building, your mood changes. You cry trying to get into the building before you even get there. Could be a toxic work environment. Lack of growth opportunities. If you are working and you've prepared yourself, you have all the degrees, all the letters behind your name, you're operating at optimal performance levels, and you still aren't advancing, if that's what you want, and you still aren't able to make advances, or those pathways have been cut off for you, might be a toxic work environment. Is there favoritism and unfair treatment in your workplace? Might be a toxic work environment. And finally, this is the one telltale sign, I promise you, and I believe this is across the board for any work environment. Is it a high rate of turnover? I can tell you right now what kind of employer you have if you stand in the parking lot of a school, and when that bell rings, the kids run out the front door and the teachers run out the back door. That parking lot is clear in 15 minutes. Might be a toxic work environment. So all of those things, when you put them together, no one of those things, let's say if you just, it's a lack of work-life balance. That's the only thing that you can honestly identify for yourself. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a toxic work environment. You may need to make some adjustments and some tweaks. But if you find that a preponderance of these 10 things are present in your workplace, they're persistent, they're prolonged, it's consistent, that is a sign that 6 or more of these things, these elements, are a part of your everyday work situation. I would be really concerned that you might be in a toxic work environment. And the first one we talked about is poor communication. And poor communication, I'm just going to read what I wrote down. This is a lack of clear and transparent communication, frequent misunderstandings, a culture of gossip and rumors. I'm telling you, yeah, Mr. McMorris is saying all of those things were present. Yes. If you can tell, that doesn't make for a positive work day. If people are gossiping and rumoring and the rumor mill's always going, that's not a good sign. That's not a healthy culture that you want to be in. It doesn't encourage you to, be your best self in the workplace. Personally, for me, when that was present, I would try to avoid it. But sometimes you get sucked into that. And I'm telling you, it just begets more mess. It just gets really messy. So if poor communication is a part of your work environment, that's something that you want to make note of. In high stress, most teachers I know are constantly working under a stressful, it's just stressful because there's so many things that need to be done. The expectations of you can be unrealistic in terms of the workload, in terms of deadlines, all of that stuff that contributes to stress. If you are experiencing chronic stress at your job, that shouldn't be. And certainly if it's chronic stress and it's prolonged, I think so many of these things can be present in a workplace at any time. You may have 1 or 2 things going on, but really what should have you, or should be a red flag, is that these things are chronic, they're persistent, and it's prolonged. It's gone on for a while. That's unsustainable. It's unsustainable for everybody. I don't care if teachers or employees are walking around, because all teachers wear a mask. We all put on our smile, we show up for the kids and we wear that mask throughout the day. But behind that, when you're at home and you have time to reflect, if you notice that these things are present in your workplace, it's time for you to reevaluate, I would say. And certainly a lack of trust and respect. That's a big one for me. If you don't trust that you can go to your admin, or if you don't trust that you can go to your superior, your supervisor, and say, hey, this something's bothering me, something is amiss, and I need your help. I'd like to partner with you so that we can work through this to make it a better work environment for you and for me. If you don't get that, if you don't feel safe enough to have a conversation like that between two adults, that's pretty telling. Yeah, if there's a lack of respect, if you are being belittled, or if you're being marginalized, are you being made an example of, or treated like a child? We're all adults. And so if any of that behavior is happening to you, I would say make note. It's not the end of the world. We don't want to lose our temper, but you certainly want to make note of how you're being treated. Do you feel like you're respected in the workplace? Do you feel valued? Do you feel like your accomplishments or your contribution is being acknowledged? All of that would be a part of a healthy, respectful work environment. And if your work environment is devoid of that, I mean, fundamentally, we should be respectful of one another. If that isn't present, I'm telling you, I just don't know how you can operate it and be your best for children or show up in any way that makes you feel good about being in that workplace. And hand in hand with that lack of respect is bullying and harassment. And I know you probably think nobody is bullying somebody in the workplace, but bullying happens and it can take on any form. It could be incessant emails, or somebody making demands of you that they don't make of other people or your other coworkers. When you're being bullied, when you're being harassed. If somebody is constantly showing up in your workspace and you feel anxious about that, or they're making you feel incompetent, or certainly if verbal abuse or verbal bullying is a part of your workplace, you know, I feel for anybody who has to go in every day in and day out, and face those kinds of conditions. It can't be good for your mental. It can't be good for your psyche. And certainly if the teacher isn't in a good mental space, there's no way you can be servicing children at your highest and giving them your absolute best. Hey, Elle, you got here just in time. And micromanagement, we all know what that looks like. Um, in a trusting work environment, you are given your work title, you know what you're expected to do, and you're free to do that. You're even given some leeway where maybe you can be creative, but you get the job done. If you have a manager or a principal or an admin who is constantly in your classroom telling you how the pencil should be sharpened, when they want the pencil sharpened, how to put the grades in, how many to put in, when to put them in, how to you know what micromanaging looks like. Nobody likes to be micromanaged, because that inherently says either I don't trust you to do this job without my being here, or I'm really intentionally trying to make sure I'm being a thorn in your side. So micromanaging to me is certainly a sign that something is a little bit off, because I think in a trusting work environment, I understand you communicate clearly to me what your expectations are. I deliver on those expectations. And when I don't, then you step in. Or if you see that I need some assistance, then you step in. But that constant day to day in your workspace, giving you directions and directives, that sounds like a micromanager to me, and nobody likes a micromanager, and it's just not necessary. And for most teachers, I think this one is sticky, the lack of work-life balance. Because I think anybody who signs on to be a teacher, you just assume that that's going to be par for the course. That's a part of the package, that I am going to be sacrificing some part of me. And to a degree, that's true. I think as caregivers, anybody in a caregiving field, I mean, that could be the school nurse, the social worker, anybody in the field of education, you understand that no, your day is not a 6 hour day. You may be on the clock for 6 hours, but everybody knows that you have to come in a little early to prep. You stay a little late, to tidy up and prep for the next day, maybe grade some papers. And you may take some things home to work on and prep for the next day. But if you have a day that goes like this, and I've had this day, you wake up in the morning and your very first thought, before you can even do your gratitude journal, before you can even run through the things you're grateful for, the first thing you think of is, oh my goodness, Pola Johnny didn't get this yesterday. I got to do this for little Johnny. And you have that thought at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. Then you hit the road, you grab a little breakfast, you get into school early, you start your day, you prep for the day, you teach all day long. Then you stay after school for meetings. You stay after school to meet with parents. You stay after school even later to grade papers. Then you take that big bag home, because my bag used to ride in the car with me every day. You take that home. Then you grade until 7 o'clock. You throw some food at your kids. You kiss your husband. You put the kids to bed, and you prep a little bit more to get a little bit more. And then you go to bed thinking about, okay, little Susie didn't get this, so tomorrow morning I got to do this for little Susie. If you are on from 5 a.m. to 9, 10 p.m. and all your thoughts, your waking thoughts and all your energy is directed at your classroom and how to get the job done, that could be toxic. That could be a sign. That's certainly a sign that you need to tweak your work life balance. Nobody can sustain that. That is unsustainable. And I know many teachers who live like that. I lived like that for years. And sometimes as teachers, we're plagued with guilt because there might be a teacher next door to you who's doing that. And if she's doing it, then you feel like, oh, well, I need to do that. In order to be a good teacher, I need to be doing what Susie Q is doing. No, you don't. So just because Susie Q's life is out of balance doesn't mean that yours has to be out of balance. It doesn't mean that you have to be out of balance in order to be deemed a good teacher. Nope. It doesn't mean that you have to dedicate all that time to be effective. I would suggest that if you have issues with work-life balance, that you might want to talk to maybe another colleague about how they're being efficient. You want to work on some efficiencies and setting some boundaries. And then constant negativity, you know what that is, pessimism. It's gloom and doom. Nobody wants to go in. Everybody runs out of the building. I'm telling you, that one's a telltale sign. The lack of growth opportunities. Are you being eliminated? Are you not getting the memos about classes that are coming up? Are you being left out intentionally? That is another sign. Favoritism, unfair treatment, and my favorite one, everybody knows what this looks like, the high turnover rate. Every year you get a brand new math teacher. Wait a minute, what happened to the last science teacher? People quitting in the middle of the school year. Happens all the time. But if you see these things, and we talked about them, I think, in length, if you see these things, not just one, not just two, and not just intermittently, because any workplace can be plagued with, say, a bout of negativity. Something comes up, people all a buzz about it, but it works itself out. That's normal. But if you find that these things that I listed, those 10 things, are constantly a part of your workday, constantly a part of your work environment, I think it's safe for you to deem that a toxic work environment. And at this point, once you kind of know, if you've gone through this checklist and you said, man, 8 of the 10 are present in my workday. And not only has this been happening to me, but it's happening to another person, or we see this and this is happening, and it's been going on for a while. And it's been going on, for a year or two. This is just the way it is around here. I think it's safe to deem that a toxic work environment, certainly a hostile work environment. And I think that there is some distinction between those two, and I don't want to go into it because I think you guys are familiar with Anne Marie Archer, the anti-HR lady. that she's a wonderful resource. If you're having some trouble in this area and this has come up and cropped up for you, you might want to talk to Anne Marie, because Anne Marie can help you. You may have some recourse. I'm going to leave that at that. But we have identified 10 things that might help you identify if you're in a toxic work environment. So you say, yep, Sandra, that's me. Yep, I'm in a toxic work environment. I don't know what to do about it. It is what it is. It's been happening. Yep, that's me. Okay, let me tell you this. In my experience, organizations, companies are slow to change. It is more likely that you are going to have to change as opposed to expecting them to change. This is the way they operate. If they've been doing it for years, just because you bring it up and you highlight that this is what it is, you may find yourself on the bad end of this situation. So what you need to do once you identify that is you're going to have to start taking care of yourself. You're going to have to be your own best advocate, because nobody is going to come into your classroom and say, "Ooh, let me help you with that. This isn't working for you. Let me help you." That's not going to happen. You're going to need to establish some self-care kind of routines. You're going to have to do some stress management, because that situation is inherently stressful. And there are a few things that you can do. So here's some things. I've got 5 things that you can do in terms of self-care. We've already identified this is a toxic work environment. It is what it is. But what can I do? Because you got to go in. Most of us can't just quit our jobs. We have to have something that can help us manage the situation. So here's one thing that you can do. I want you to consider establishing some boundaries. And for teachers, boundaries might mean there's a cutoff time. I'm only going to give you so much time that I'm going to dedicate to this job. I am not going to be that person who wakes up at 6 a.m. and my first waking thought is, what do my students need? And when I lay my head down, most teachers, 10, 11, 12 o'clock, my last waking thought is, what do my students need? That you need some boundaries. And for me, it had to do with claiming and reclaiming time for myself. And so for me, what worked, I decided that weekends were going to be for me. I'm sorry. That was going to be my time, my family time. It's time for me to run errands. And I held on to that. It meant that during the week, though, I had to be really efficient. I had to look at my practice and decide, okay, what is absolutely necessary for me to operate at my best and give my students my best. Being stressed and being out of balance, that's not best for your kids. There's no way you can be serving them and giving them the best when you aren't at your best. We all know you can't give from an empty cup. So I'm going to need you to consider establishing some healthy boundaries. That might even mean saying no to some things, like saying no to a committee. You can't attend every event. You can't attend every meeting. You cannot come and be on every committee. You have the right as a person in the workplace to say no, and no is a complete sentence. No is a good way to start setting a boundary. Just say no. And I know that most teachers aren't comfortable with that, but I promise you, in the end, it will serve you best. So one thing that you can do for yourself, if you're in a toxic work environment, is start to set some healthy boundaries. And time boundaries are the easiest ones to set, along with just saying no to the additional things outside of the requirements in your regular teacher workload. The second thing that you can do for yourself, besides setting those boundaries, is I think it was helpful for me to cultivate a supportive network of friends and colleagues. Trying to go this thing alone, it just, the isolation is another factor. It's bad enough that you feel misused, mishandled, and, bullied or harassed at work. It's weighing on you mentally. you're going to need some support. I wouldn't suggest that anybody try to go this alone. Just, don't internalize this. This is anything that you did. You didn't do anything to bring this on. Nobody deserves to be treated like that in a workplace. There's no amount of money that anybody could pay me, or it's any amount of money that would make it worth you going into that kind of environment day in and day out. So if that is you, please consider confiding in a trusted colleague. And I'm torn on this one, because I would suggest, I think it's safe to find a colleague outside of your immediate work environment, because what you don't want to do is confide in a colleague, someone that you think is trusted, a confidant, and they go for whatever reason and take back anything that you said to your administrator, your supervisor, or your boss. So, when thinking about creating this network of support for yourself, you might consider your clergy. You might consider getting a therapist. Trust me on this one. Therapy saved me. First of all, I think everybody should be in therapy. I don't think therapy is for just stressed people. I don't think therapy is for crazy people. I think therapy is for everybody because life just throws, many things at us, and we don't have to go it alone. Most teachers have good benefits. You have benefits that will cover your therapy, EAP, all of these things at your disposal. So remember, the first thing we're going to do is set some boundaries. We're going to start saying no to a few things. We're going to pull back a little bit, because you can't just keep giving, giving, giving and think that that's sustainable. And the second thing you're going to do is assemble a team. I would also suggest that while, if you're married, I'm sure you probably discuss things with your spouse, but I wouldn't make that my only source of support, because your families are already making a sacrifice. Any families of teachers are making sacrifices because you aren't really fully present there all the time. It's a demanding job. So they're making sacrifices, whether the sacrifices that you aren't always available, that you're caught up with your class, and whatever the demands of the job are. So don't dump on your husband. Don't dump on your wife. Don't dump on your sister and and your parents. They care. They want to be there for you. But one, I don't know that they're always the best equipped to even identify with what's happening with you. They mean well. They just want to help you solve the problem. And it can be overbearing for them. And you don't want to let this thing permeate your household and your family. So I would suggest that outside of the house, certainly look into getting a therapist, confide in maybe your clergy, maybe a trusted group of colleagues that work in another district, certainly another building, and maybe even a related profession, somebody else who's in the giving field, maybe teachers, doctors, nurses, social workers, whatever network of people you can assemble that will support you. They will listen, and they will listen without judgment. And one of the things I look for is, when I'm telling you this, if they start to gaslight you even more, if you start to hear things like this, oh no, it's all in your mind, it can't be that bad. Or if you hear something like, well, teachers, that's just a part of it. Or 20 teachers did this before you, they survived. Or you're in it so deep, you've been doing it 20 years, you can make it 5 more. If people that you confide in say those kinds of things to you, I'm gonna venture to say they might not be the best people to be in your support group. Because what you need when you find yourself in a situation like that, and what helped me most was, I can tell y'all, you all already know, I say this, especially for women. I think every woman needs a good old group of old women. I say old women because I'm an old woman. I think you need some seasoned, mature women who've been through some things that can give you good counsel. If you are of the praying, I pray. If you can get somebody to help pray with you, pray for you, send positive thoughts. But what you don't want is somebody else who's going to continue to gaslight you. That is not going to be helpful. So I would say, certainly start to build a community around you. For me, I was able to connect with Exodus Summit. These were women who were looking to transition out of a career just like I was. They were at a point where they were trying to pivot. And we all just got together and said, well, wait a minute, what are you working on? It was more like an accountability group. And we began to support one another and listen to each other and encourage our dreams. So, certainly, that's going to help you weather this storm. Another thing that was helpful for me during that stressful time was I began to meditate. And so I think it's helpful, especially if you're experiencing any kind of anxiety, depression, if the workplace has you where some things are starting to manifest in your body, you're going to have to step back. And meditation, I've got 10 meditation apps too. I pull those up. I want to share with you guys. There are 10 apps, and I can tell you 10% happier saved my life. I would pop that in my headphones and walk. Oh my goodness. If it wasn't for that app, and I wrote them down, let me see. I got a list here. So 10 apps that are, most of these have a free trial. And so you can use them free for some time, but get something. It could be yoga, you all, it could be walking in nature. It could be anything that helps you get present. Breath work, get your chakras aligned. I don't care what it is, but you're going to need something that helps you manage this stress. You're going to need something that helps you when you're having anxious moments. And I found that meditation, I had never meditated before. Journaling helps, writing it down, getting it out of your mind. If you haven't journaled before, like I was never really a consistent journaler, you need to get with Kathy Hampton. I'm telling you, it's journaling in a whole new way. It's journaling reimagined. If you think journaling is just picking up a pencil and piece of paper and just, writing down, spilling your guts, it could be that, but it's so much more. And I'm telling you, catch Kathy's live journaling sessions changed my life. It was another dimension for me, another way for me to get things out of my head and get them on a piece of paper where I could look at them. But here are some apps that might help you too. 10% Happier was my favorite. I think many people are familiar with Calm. I want to say Calm may even have like a story time, you all. I had an app, and I think it might be Calm, that I was using, and they would tell the most soothing bedtime stories. Because if you're anxious, your sleep is probably disturbed. I mean, if you're depressed, usually one of the manifestations of those things is sleep deprivation. Your sleep is pattern is all off. Well, I would put on these really dreamy kind of story. They tell it, you put them in your headphones, or you can play them just in your room quietly, and that helped me. Headspace is another app. Insight Timer. Now, I haven't used that one, but it ranked pretty highly when I was doing my research. Meditation Studio, the Mindfulness app, Waking Up, and then there's one called Breathe, but it's spelled Breethe. So you might be new to meditation, and I promise you, meditation isn't this diggy 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 do, diggy diggy do. My meditation, you don't always have to be sitting down either. You don't have to lay down. It can take on any form. I would pop in 10% Happier. There was a guided meditation. They did breath work. All kinds of stuff was built into that app. And I want to say maybe I paid $99 for the entire year. I don't know what it was. Whatever I paid for, trust me, it was worth it. It kept me out of jail. It kept me out of jail. And I'm telling you, it helped me go back in the next day. If things would get hairy for me, I could remember, okay, wait a minute, what's this meditation? I'm safe, I'm happy, I'm whole. Trust me, you're going to need that. It can't hurt to try to be mindful, to stay present. So yeah, that was one of the things that kind of helped me get through the stickiest part of it. A fourth thing that was helpful for me was working in some physical activity. This was when my walking really kicked up, y'all. I mean, I would be having such a rough day sometimes that before I would even go home, I would just stop at the park and walk because I didn't want to take that stuff home to my kids. I would walk in the forest preserve. Oh, Lord. One of the benefits of that was not only was I able to clear my mind and kind of hash things out, I could talk it out and say what I should have said. I could go through the whole day. I could reflect and run through the whole day while I was walking, and it prevented me from going home. And you know how it is. Sometimes you kick the cat when the dog bit you. It could be that something went on at work, but you go home and take it out on your family members. You don't want to do that. So, working in some physical activity, and you may have to get clever with it. I worked at a school that had a track. And in the middle of the day on our lunch break, I would walk with a colleague. We would walk around there, and it was I mean, really a trusted colleague. We would talk and do all kinds of wonderful things for one another to get through the second half of the day. So if you can work in some physical activity so that you can, get some of that energy out, mitigate some of that negativity, there's nothing but positivity. We all know that when we exercise, we release endorphins. It's good for your mind, it's good for your body. And if you do it long enough and consistently enough, then you get the benefit of the exercise too. So walking, swimming, working out, even physical hobbies, painting, anything that helps you with that mind body connection where you're working things out physically, that was very helpful for me. And I'm telling you, the walking, I kept walking. Even after I left that situation, I continued to walk, and it's still one of my favorite activities. But that's something that you can do that is self care. It's for you. You're pouring back into yourself because you're going to need it if you're going back into that environment. And finally, we self care is such a buzzword, but it is helpful to have a self care ritual or routine where routinely you go to do things that feed your soul, that feed your spirit. And so often, I think women in particular, we think manicure, pedicure, massage, and those things are great. Don't get me wrong, but I would caution you that those are really kind of surface things in terms of self-care. Certainly necessary. Getting with a good friend. Oh my goodness. Self-care for me was brunch. I mean, you'll lift my spirits immediately with some mimosas. I mean, we don't want to be drinking too much, but that time away where I just wasn't even focused on or thinking about work, I could leave that stuff all behind me. That was self-care for me. Of course, a massage is good, manicures, pedicures, but self-care for me also is therapy. Self-care is being able to journal. All of those things were things where I could get out of me in a very safe place that, hey, you all, this is what's happening to me. I acknowledged it. I wasn't running from it. I was looking at it head on, and then I was doing things to combat the stress and the anxiety of a toxic work environment. So let's just recap. Here's what we've already identified: the 10 things. Lord, 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 we find ourselves, we're in a toxic work environment and the environment's not going to change. What are the 5 things that you can do for yourself? You're going to have to be your own best advocate. One, establish some healthy boundaries. Learn to say no. Turn down some committees. Turn down some opportunities. Not necessarily opportunities. You know what I mean. Turn down that extra work. You don't have to be at every meeting. It's not serving you. Cultivate a support system and network that includes people that might be outside of your immediate work environment. You don't want to confide in somebody in the workplace. The worst thing in the world is to be betrayed in the workplace. You're already experiencing these horrific things, and you confide in somebody and they go back and tell it. Do yourself a favor. Find somebody outside the workplace. It's safe. It's not a concern. Practice some mindfulness. We talked about those 10 apps. I will drop those in the description. If you have some that you love, please feel free, drop them in the chat. We share around here. I'm not an expert, y'all. All I can tell you, and I tell this to everybody, I am not an expert. The only thing I can do is tell you what worked for me. Yes. And if they're gaslighting you, Mac, you read in my mind. We're going to talk about an exit plan. So engage in some physical activity. Get moving. Get your body moving. Not only are you releasing endorphins, but you get the benefit of a more fit body, a healthy body. These are all things that are going to help you sustain until we can get to that exit plan. Because ultimately, Yep, this is me. I'm sorry, I am shameless. If you're a teacher and you're in a toxic work environment, I'm advocating for you to leave. That's my position. I'm not saying I don't think it's going to get better. I don't think that that's how this thing works. It did not work for me. That was not the case. They were not interested in me. My complaint and I was made to be the scapegoat. You don't need all of this stress in your life. So we're going to get to how you make an exit plan, because when the rubber hits the road and it's time to go, you need a plan. We're not going to bounce out of here all willy-nilly. And finally, establish some self-care rituals and routines, things that feed your spirit. Because I'm telling you, if you have to go into that place, it could be a soul stilling, it could be, it's just a joy kill. Find what brings you joy. If painting brings you joy, paint. If singing brings you joy, find some place to sing. If riding your bike brings you joy, you're going to have to do those things. Nobody came to save me. And I wish if somebody had given me some of these resources, I don't know. I left as soon as I think I could. It was good. I left the way I wanted to, and I left in time. But I promise you, I didn't even realize. It took me a very long time to even realize and acknowledge that I was in a toxic work environment, and I don't want that for you. So we've established it is. We've given you 10 things to clearly identify as a toxic work environment. I've given you 5 things that you can do to protect yourself, feed yourself, rejuvenate yourself. The next thing we're going to do, the next topic is, how do you build a support system? And we talked about that briefly. And I am of the mindset that your support system, first of all, it needs to be safe. It needs to be safe. It needs to be affirming. It needs to be positive. The last thing you want, I think Mac made this comment, is that you don't want anybody gaslighting you. Trust me, there's a fair amount of, it's going to be, gaslighting is going to be present in any toxic work environment, because of course they're going to tell you it's not what you think it is. That's the first thing they're going to say. Oh, it's you. It got so bad, I was gaslighting myself. I promise you, I was like, well, maybe it is me. Maybe I brought this all on myself. Maybe it's anybody who's gaslighting you, they cannot be a part of your healing. They are persona non grata. They cannot. Hey, Katrina, thank you for joining us. Hey, Marissa. Oh my goodness. Marissa is another great source. Y'all check out Marissa's website and check out all of her stuff, her YouTube page. She talks about leaving a toxic work environment as well. This is real. It's happening. And I'm so happy that Black women are coming together to talk about it, because there's a fair amount of fear when you are in that situation, particularly if you feel alone, like I felt alone. I felt like it was me against the world. And I learned very quickly that my colleagues, some of them were just afraid. They were too afraid to even partner with me and help me. So I would suggest to you that when you're building this network of support, look for people outside of the workplace, if at all possible. And that's not to say that I didn't have trusted colleagues. I did have a few, but still, you don't want to even put them in a compromising position. So for me, it might work for you, but I personally think find somebody outside of the workplace. Find like-minded colleagues. Again, these could be people outside of your building. It could be people outside of your district. There are teachers all over the place. There are social workers, school psychologists. Find somebody, though. I think it's helpful if they at least understand the inner workings and the nuances, because teaching that environment can be really nuanced. And somebody who can't identify with it, it may sound like, oh, you're just complaining about nothing. That doesn't sound like a big deal. So you want someone who can at least identify with all the things that teachers are called on to do, because there's this misnomer that teachers work 6 hours a day. I've heard it so many times. Oh, you all only work 9 months out of the year. You should be grateful. Oh my goodness, that sends me over the edge every time I hear it, because for me, teaching was just like parenting. If you have children, you're never done parenting. You're parenting. I don't care how old your kids are. You carry them in your heart. You carry them in your spirit. You're always coaching from the sideline. My classroom was nothing more but another set of children that I was parenting. I carried them with me. You need a way to kind of distance yourself, create a healthy boundary, and you're going to need some support with that. So start to find trusted colleagues. For me, again, Exodus Summit was a great resource. I was able to partner with women. They may not have been in education, but we were all like-minded. We were all sold on pivoting at this point in our lives. We were looking for a different lifestyle, and we were able to come together, support each other, listen. I mean, genuinely listen to one another. Um, we talked about seeking external support. That would be your therapist, your clergy, professionals that can help you navigate this situation. We talked about developing self-care practices. I don't want to keep going over the same things. And here's one in my research. I don't know. This wouldn't have worked for me because not only was my work environment toxic, it was hostile. I knew that they were not, my admin wasn't Team Sandra for whatever reason. And I could go into that, a myriad of reasons of why I think that was the case. But you could try this. Perhaps you could engage your administrator, your supervisor, or your boss in a conversation and simply say, this is what's happening to me, or this is how I feel. It could very well be that maybe they don't know. I think every human being ought to be given the benefit of the doubt. You might want to have a conversation, but I would suggest that you are prepped and prepared. Don't go in emotional, don't go in tear, don't do any of that. Write down your concerns. Have tangible examples and say, on this day, this occurred. This is what it made me. This is, the outcome. This is how it made me feel. This, be prepared. If you are met with genuine and authentic concern, where your admin, your supervisor says, oh my goodness, I didn't realize this is the effect that it was having on you. Let's partner together so that we don't perpetuate this year. If you get that kind of response, okay, cautiously, I would say, okay, give them the benefit of the doubt and see if they act in good faith. And if you can resolve some of this that way, God bless. But if you're met with resistance, denial, gaslighting, you already know. You already know what you're dealing with. I would say you understand this is not an ally. This is not going to be a place. This is not going to be a person that is willing to hear you, treat you fairly, and has your best interest at heart. Start looking outside for the support that you need. And then finally, it may be time to explore some external opportunities. I'm sorry. We've talked about the 10 things. We've identified it is a toxic workplace. You're working night and day on yourself. You're going to therapy, you're journaling, you're running, you're doing all the things. And it doesn't get better. There may come a day that it's just time to go. It's just time. And for me, I had totally brought into the narrative, I've been doing this almost 30 years. What else am I going to do? I don't, all I know to do is be a teacher. All I know to do is, that is so wrong. It is so, because the truth is, teachers have transferable skills. There are companies that are willing to pay you for those transferable skills. And we can go into, that's a whole nother video. I can tell you seriously, I won't even stop right here. Trust me, it's time to look to external opportunities. And some of those things could be, we're going to talk about some alternative career paths. What are some things that teachers can do? Because you do have other things that you can do. I can tell you too, I've got 5 companies that hire you right now today. I promise you. Well, that's another video. I'm going to do that one too. We're going to talk about what are transferable skills that teachers have and who are some companies that are currently looking to hire those teachers. But here's some things that you might consider. And I'm not saying leave one toxic environment to go to another. So we want to clearly identify before we start pivoting and making moves. You want to clearly identify those things that were present in the workplace that made it a toxic work environment, because you want to make sure that the place that you're going to isn't the stew pot. You don't want to jump from the fire into the flame. So you want to know, what was it? Identify those. And then let's talk about some things that you could do. Teachers today, you could be a corporate trainer. Companies hire people to train their employees. What else? That sounds like a job made in heaven. Now all you're doing, instead of teaching children, you're teaching adults. They may have a module that they already use. They just need you to implement. They might need you to create a training module. It doesn't matter. You've got the skills to transition into that kind of position. Instructional design. If I had a nickel for every time a group of teachers and I got together over a bottle of wine and came up with a new curriculum, I've created after school programs, I've created math programs, reading nights, and I'm talking about all this for the free and the low. There are people who will pay you for that. You can be an instructional designer. Teachers possess strong curriculum development and instructional planning skills. I'm reading from my notes. They can transition into instructional design roles where they create educational materials and online courses for companies, universities, and e-learning platforms. You all, 25 years ago, that was not a thing. There were no e-learning platforms. You could throw a rock out this window right now and hit an e-learning platform. They need people. They need people to help them write those curriculums. Not only that, you all, they need people to help sell it. Who better equipped than a teacher? That's something you could consider. Educational consulting. I can't tell you how many people I witnessed in public school who left the classroom only to double back to that same school district as a consultant. Who better knows the math, the whole math program? You've been teaching it for 20 years. You've been teaching it for 10, 15 years. You could come out of the classroom, put aside all of the lesson plan and all that stuff, and be a consultant. Now I only come in. You all have a problem. Your test scores have dipped. Let me tell you what you can do. Here's a prescription for that. You can support them as a reading strategist. You can do this all, though, from the lens of a consultant, where now you work for yourself. You definitely got the skills. You definitely have the experience. You can pivot. Teachers can pivot. I'm telling you. Here's one. I did this one. Tutoring and test prep. They will pay you to tutor and test prep. The pandemic offered up and changed some things for us, you all. I can't tell you how many parents I know that during that time they hired a tutor because they didn't want their kids to fall behind. Parents are really advocates. They can be advocates. You could put together a roster, I bet you, from the same building of parents that would be willing to pay you to private tutor. If you don't want a private tutor because you don't want to schedule and you don't want to have to create the curriculum and bring all those things, get with a company. Cambly, there are enough of them, and I'm not advocating for one or the other, but I'm saying that is an avenue. Test prep, Huntington, all of them. I could go on and on and on. Mathnasium, Kumon. I just don't want anybody sitting in a toxic work environment, buying into the narrative. I've done this for 20 years. This is all I can do. That is not true. There's certainly opportunities out there. You just have to know where to look. Educational technology, that goes hand in hand with all these e-platforms. We had gotten so, you all, if I didn't use 10 platforms in a day in my classroom, I didn't use 2. Those people need employees. Who do you think is writing that stuff? Who do you think is selling that stuff? Those, many times, they're former teachers, retired teachers. That is certainly an avenue that you could consider. Writing and publishing. Textbooks. I remember I did all of this stuff, y'all, to be honest with you. At some point in my career, I touched on many of these things. Textbook companies will hire you, if nothing more, to proofread. Any teacher knows what a basel is. If you ever open up a basel, in the front of that book, you're going to see 15 teacher faces. These are the people who contributed to pulling that basel or that workbook series or whatever it is together. Some of them have doctorates, some of them have master's degrees, and some are just practitioners. That could be you. Check with your book publishing companies, all of them. Those people hire teachers. I did that one time over the summer and they paid me good money. And it wasn't a lot of work. I promise you. I've even worked for a museum. We put together modules for kids that would be coming to. I did that for, where was it? It was the planetarium, and we did that as a cohort. We wrote up, because of course kids come to the planetarium. Well, you need something engaging, you need some interactive. Who do you think is writing that? Teachers are doing that. Consider nonprofit organizations. Now, I'm not saying you're going to make it rich at a nonprofit, but it might be less stressful, it might not be toxic. And so, really, what is the price of your sanity? What's the price of your mental health? Consider that. Instructional coaching, all of these things. I did that for a season where, and I'll be honest with you, this is not my ideal way to do it. But when teachers are struggling, they need help and they deserve support and they deserve help. Why couldn't you? You've taught for 20 years. You could probably walk into a classroom and identify exactly 2 or 3 areas where a teacher could use some support, where she could do something different to be more efficient. Consider instructional coaching. And finally, online education. We talked about all of that. Certainly, technology is a way that you can pivot, make money, still stay in the field, and put to use all those skills and all that experience. So we're talking about, okay, maybe it's time to pivot. Here's some things that you can do differently. Now we need to make the exit plan, because ultimately, I will say this shamelessly. If you have identified from that list of 10 things that you are in a toxic workplace, I'm all about let's go. I'm all about let's go. And the sooner the better. I just don't think that you need to be subjected to that kind of harassment, that kind of wear and tear on your body, on your mental. Nope. We need to start with an exit plan. And for most teachers, no teacher is happy about the prospect of leaving in the middle of a school year. We never want to put our students at peril. We're constantly self-sacrificing, but eventually you have to choose you. Eventually you just have to say, this is not working and I need to start planning. So one of the things I would say is certainly assess the situation. You've come up with, okay, this isn't working. And by that, assessing the situation, what's in front of you, you need to know what kind of benefits are going to be available to you. If you make this transition, you might want to consider health insurance. Will you be able to get health insurance with maybe your spouse's plan? Will your employer provide some kind of coverage for 60 days, 90 days? You want to make all those assessments. If you are retiring, there's some different challenges there. You certainly want to talk to whoever's over your retirement board. That was helpful for me because, too, I think we're operating out of the fear many times of, oh, the money, I'm not going to have enough. Well, you very well might have enough, So check out the numbers, do your numbers, know all of that stuff before you make any concrete, definitive moves. We certainly want to assess the situation and we want to move in a way that is best for us. This might be a good time to lean on people who have a little more expertise. I know personally, when I was prepping to leave, I talked to all of my colleagues who had retired before me. I wanted to know, they were a wealth of information. They were giving me information like when, how to time it, what you could expect, questions to answer when I went to the retirement board. So utilize the people that are in your immediate circle. We talked about seeking support, evaluate your options. Maybe you want to take some time off. Maybe you want to take a sabbatical. This would be a perfect time. You've decided to leave the toxic work environment. You might need some time to yourself. Going on sabbatical, it is raining like cats and dogs. Y'all know I'm in the jungle. I just heard all that rain. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, y'all. That's my ADHD. You know the way my ADHD is set up. It is raining cats and dogs. But at any rate, I digress. So you want to evaluate your options. Are you going to take a sabbatical? Are you going to Maybe just take an extended leave and pivot into a new position. Are you going to retire completely? Are you going to leave the field and start a new business? Just weigh it out. Just look, lay everything out. This is a time for you to reflect. It is a time for you to, dream your dream. That's what I did. I was like, wait a minute, if I left this place, what would I do? And I just began to think, what would I do if money wasn't an object and I didn't have to come to this blood-sucking job? It was never the children. I'm telling you, it was never the children. It was all the other crazy. What would I do? So give yourself that time. Be a kid. Go back. What makes you happy? What would you do if you could do anything in the world? So when you're weighing out your options, about it, what would make you happy? What would the perfect optimal job or work situation look like? And then start working backwards from there. I would also say this might be a good time to update your resume. It might be a good time to, even like while you're transitioning, you might want to take a few classes, brush up on some skills, add some more stuff to the kitty, because you want to prep yourself for what may be coming next. Explore being an entrepreneur. Talk with an entrepreneur. Get a mentor. Helped me. Find somebody who's doing what you want to do. If you could do anything in the world and you want to open up a cookie business, find somebody who opened up a cookie business. Ask them, can you shadow them for a day? You just want to see, you want to know honestly, because again, you do not want to leave a bad situation for a worse situation. You just want to be as informed as possible. So get a mentor. Plan your financials. Plan for financial, do you have enough money to maybe sit home for a month or two? Certainly look at your money. We talked about that one. I don't want to go back. Prepare for interviews. Somebody like me who had been in the workplace for 25 years, I hadn't interviewed in 20 years. What do you mean? Trust me, the landscape has changed. So you might want to tap into some resources with LinkedIn. You may even want to do some practice kind of interviews. I don't know about you, but I would go on and interview y'all just for the practice. Lord knows I'm not even trying to get this job, sir, but I do need to practice, So start doing some research on interviews, have good questions, get your resume together. Just consider that whole ball that you need to start looking, because we're going to pivot. We're coming out of here. You may have to interview. Of course, take care of yourself during this time. Submit applications. You can't get the job if you don't apply. And then plan for your resignation or plan for your retirement, which is what I did. Once I understood that, yep, this is it, there was paperwork that needed to be done. There were documents that I needed to gather. And you don't want to do any of that in a rush. You don't want to do any of that in a huff. And I would caution you at this time, you also don't want to burn any bridges, not unnecessarily. You want to start to gather references, letters of recommendation, all of these things that might help you in the next phase or your next career. And again, I know it's so tempting on the way out the door to be like, F you and F you too. And I've been meaning to tell you, trust me, your absence, taking all of your skills, taking all of your talent, taking all your good energy, your good vibes over someplace else, they're gonna feel your absence. You don't have to, on the way out, burn down everything. You don't have to slash and burn on the way out the door. We're gonna keep it cute, we're gonna keep it classy, we're gonna keep it moving. And trust me, everybody wins. So we talked about today. I'm just gonna wrap it up, y'all, because how long have we been going? We've been here for a minute. I don't know, coming up on an hour, and that was good. Okay, I said I wanted to try to cover everything in just about an hour, and we did it. So if you have any questions, feel free, drop your questions in the chat. If you want to follow up with me, because I understand as a teacher, there's a good deal of fear. We're afraid that if your employer finds out that you're looking for other employment, that maybe they won't give you a good recommendation, or maybe they'll try to sabotage, or maybe they'll just make your life even more of a living hell. Maybe you just want to talk to somebody in confidence. Feel free to reach out to me. I promise you, I understand. And anything you tell me, I will take absolutely to my grave because it was what I needed. And there was somebody that was there for me to listen. I felt safe. And I think we want to ensure that you're safe during this time. We want to ensure that you have a way to vent, that you don't feel alone, you aren't operating in isolation. Of course, take care of yourself, reach out, ask for help. If you need anything from me, please call me. You know how to get in touch with me. You can hit me up, email me at fromlacktollegacy@gmail.com. And I will be doing some follow up to this because I really want to dig deep. I think teachers need to know for sure what are those transferable skills, because you have them and I've listed them because I had to list them for myself. And who are those companies? Because there are specific companies. I can tell you one right off the top. Amazon hires. Who else? I'll do that because I want to do justice to that whole topic. We're going to talk about transferable skills and companies that are willing to hire and are currently looking for people who have that skill set. So thank you guys for joining me again tonight. Please don't forget, you all, hit the like button, subscribe, share this with somebody who you think might benefit. If you know a stressed out teacher who feels hopeless, she's going through, don't let her suffer. Don't let her languish. And I say her, but I mean any teacher, male, female, however you identify. Nobody deserves to be in a place that isn't affirming, that doesn't appreciate your gifts and your talent. Nobody deserves to be belittled, harassed, or bullied in the workplace. And if that's happening to you, there are things that you can do. You don't have to stay. You don't have to take it. Take it from me. I left. I was scared some of the time, but the more you do it and the more you surround yourself with people who are willing to step in and support you authentically, you will begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel too. Thank you, Marissa. You guys are the best. I'm telling you all, I said this before. I don't have subscribers. I have family members. I think everybody in this chat is my friend or my family member, one of the two. And I just adore you all. I appreciate you. Don't forget, you all, we are almost, I need to check it again. I'm about 15 subscribers away from monetizing this thing. So help a retired teacher out, y'all. I'm going to do another series too. This is a new thing that I'm embarking on because I'm out here in Bali, y'all. And because I'm now starting to operate from my teacher pension, I am challenging myself to live and to see if I can, because I think I can, on $50 a day. And that means for lodging, food, everything, $50 a day. So I'm going to launch this. Can I do it? And y'all can follow along as I try, because I think I can. And if you think about it, $50 a day works out to be about $1,500 a month. So I'm going to see. That's going to be one of the challenges. So stay tuned, you guys. We got some things coming up for teachers in particular. Teachers I have a heart for, mommies I have a heart for, students I have a heart for, and certainly all of my friends and family that are here with me tonight. So on that note, y'all, I got to get to bed. It's 1 o'clock in the morning here. You all have a beautiful rest of your day. If you need me, reach out. You know how to get in touch with me. And we'll be talking again soon, y'all. Bye, everybody.